And we are live. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Primal Performance Podcast. This is your host, Chad Sheehan, with my lovely co-host, Melissa Leach. We actually have a really special one for you today. We have our very first guest on the podcast, Mr. Evan Chmieleski. He is the owner of the Fight for Tomorrow Martial Arts Academy in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He is a pro MMA fighter. He was on Team USA in 2016 for Combat Sambo, and he's a black belt in Japanese and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Kind of a little backstory on Evan. So when I was younger, elementary, middle school, I was being coached in Warrenton, Pennsylvania at a martial arts facility, mainly for wrestling. And Evan was one of the pro fighters there. And growing up, I was always this like scared little kid, just trying to make my way through sports and in wrestling. And Evan was this big, bad, tattooed up martial arts pro MMA fighter. We went to a couple of his professional fights in Atlantic City. Evan, I think it was New Breed, right? New Breed Fighting, at least one of the fight promotions.
So New Breed was the amateur promotion, and then as a pro, I fought for Ring of Combat, Cage Fury Fighting Championships, and a few others. But yeah, I fought for a bunch of different promotions, as usual for regional guys.
Gotcha.
You kind of just like fight wherever you can get on a card, you know.
So then from there, grew up, moved away from that gym, wrestled for many more years, and then, obviously lost contact with Evan. Over the years, my dad and I, it would just come up randomly, and I wonder how Evan's doing. And really weird, Melissa got into striking, and she found a place in Doylestown, and I said, hey, where are you going for striking? And she goes, yeah, this place, Fight for Tomorrow. I looked it up online. I'm like, holy shit, it's Evan Chmieleski. I cannot believe it's him. He's back in the area. So full circle, brother, and it's pretty damn cool. You made a pretty big impact on my life just growing up, and I looked up to you a lot, and I'm sure it's hard for you to understand, but you really have, man. It was really cool to come visit you. And just for the people listening, I got to stop in for some practices while I was home in the area and get choked out by Evan. So that was fun. So talk about full circle. Good to have you on.
It's so funny. It's I was listening to you describe me as big and bad, and I don't think you probably feel like I'm that big anymore. You're like twice my size now. The size comparison has changed quite a bit over the years, but yeah, I really appreciate all the kind words, and it is really cool to see things kind of go full circle. And I always know that, because, like you said, you never really know how you're impacting someone. And I think that that's probably the coolest part about this whole experience for me in the last couple of years since I've opened my gym, is having people that, I trained with, or they trained under me or whatever, come back and they come to my gym, and it's like, you were a kid and now you're a man. And it's really cool because it kind of lets you know in a very real sense that you carried yourself correctly during that time, without requiring even someone to say, hey, you really left a good impression on me or whatever. If I didn't, and I hadn't seen you in 12 years, you would just not come to my gym. So even without all the kind words that you said, the fact that we're still connecting right now, that kind of shows me that, while in my younger days, I did make a lot of mistakes and things that I wish I could have handled better. At least I know that I was still carrying myself in a way that, was, what's the word I'm looking for? Left an impression on people that they knew where my heart was at the very least. So yeah, it's really cool. And I really appreciate you bringing me on and, having a chance to be a part of your podcast and the next stage of your life. So thank you.
Yeah. So going from professional fighting and competing, and I know you still compete in certain forms of martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu, correct?
Yeah. Whenever it makes sense. Whenever
How did you go from competing to owning a facility?
It was quite a process. I actually was a corporate manager for a restaurant that I was there for years. I was there and then I left because I was supposed to be working at the gym that we met at. That whole situation didn't work out the way that I was expecting it to. So I ended up having to go back to the restaurant industry and kind of like work my way up all over again. Start as a dishwasher, don't have a college degree or anything like that. Just kind of did it the old school way, just worked really hard and asked questions and asked what my supervisors wanted and then just tried to deliver on that. Ended up going back there and working all the way back up again. And I became the general manager of the second highest volume store in the company. And so I was doing that, and that kind of seemed like it was going to be what I was going to do. And I was going to, because I was still training the whole time, and I still was involved in training and martial arts and things like that. But it just kind of seemed like the money was going to be with the restaurant industry, and that's what I was going to do. And I did like the restaurant industry until I got to a certain point where I became more of a corporate manager than like when I was the kitchen manager. I loved it because I was on the grill. I was in the trenches with the cooks. We were banging out, all these high volume sales hours and doing these things. And it really had like that sense of like brotherhood type of a thing, the team mentality. Front of house does not feel that way. Servers are like, they care about their 4 tables. They don't care about the other servers' 4 tables. And they literally sometimes steal silverware from each other, So when I went out front, became a general manager, and I started also having to deal with the executives and that whole side of things, it was not a good match. I was in trouble all the time because I was always fighting for the employees, and I was the most vocal opponent to most of the things that they were doing. But anyway, I kind of figured that was going to be my thing, and I was going to do what I could and maybe be an executive one day, and maybe I could change it from there. And eventually I just realized that there's no way that I would ever be able to be an executive because that's not the type of person that I am. And I'd never be able to look at a spreadsheet and decide that we need to lay off the mother of 4 who moved here from Ecuador and hasn't seen her father in 22 years, and he's dying because, well, we really gotta raise productivity during our morning shift. So that started the whole, like, man, I don't know if I want to do this forever. And then when COVID happened, that kind of just gave me okay, we're out of here. We're not doing that anymore. Working through that was a nightmare. And so one day I just decided when I was at the gym that the world needs more places where people can go and be on a team where they truly are there to better each other, and nobody's screaming at each other about politics or vaccination status or marital or religion or any of these things. It's all about like, we're all here to help each other be healthier, stronger, more committed to ourselves. And I said, well, the world needs more of these places. So that day I left the gym, I went to work, and I put my notice in. That was kind of the final push off the ledge that I needed.
That actually was one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you on the podcast, because, when I first went to Fight for Tomorrow, being an adult learner trying something new can be very intimidating. And it's not that I don't know how to move. I've been in, these different movement modalities for forever. And I train movement professionals too. But one of the things that I was really impressed with was it was a deeper approach. Like, I would argue that you can go almost anywhere to learn striking or to learn jujitsu or to learn yoga or to go get a workout, and you can get a good workout in. But having been to your facility, I was like, there's something way deeper. And it was, I think, my first or second class. I wish I may take a screenshot, because you gave out these amazing t-shirts, and each t-shirt you're wearing it right now, had a value on it. And I was so like, I remember the first one that I took was courage, and you're wearing compassion. And I was like, I think when you establish a community, what I'm hearing you talk about is character and how you show up in the world, and like who you are here is who you are everywhere. And like, Chad picked up on it when he was little, and you were a stand for that for you, even as you're like exploring being an executive. And now, like, it really, I feel like Fight for Tomorrow is really an expression of that. And what we know in the health industry and the fitness community is that actually, like, it's not always the workout that's going to help people stay healthy and help their mental state and help them survive whatever it is they're surviving. It's actually the community behind it. Sorry, two dogs fighting. Nice big dog. But like, it's actually the community behind them that keeps them accountable. It keeps them supported. And that, I think, is a really special thing that Fight for Tomorrow has. And where it comes from is you, and then you bringing in the people who sort of stand for those values. And I would love to hear more from you in terms of, because I a lot, there's so much. So as a yoga teacher and one who trains yoga, different yoga teachers, the mindfulness, the mindset, and like the values that Fight for Tomorrow is really rooted in. I'm like, there's a lot of similarities there. And I'd love to kind of pick your brain and hear, just even on the t-shirts, like those values.
Sure,
and how
sure.
they get expressed.
So there is a quote from Miyamoto Musashi, who is like he's like the most famous samurai. He's like the one everybody quotes. And the quote is, when one knows the way broadly, he can see it in all things. And there you go, the Book of Five Rings. He's holding it up. That is the easiest way, I believe, to sum up what martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, is the most. Jiu-jitsu and fighting in general is the most parallel with life. And I opened the gym with that as an intentional part of what I was trying to do, because the gyms that I was at when I was younger were not like that at all. I remember my first fight was 5 weeks after the first day I ever walked in the gym. That's not how that's not how you do that. And I would walk in and I would be sparring with guys that were 2-3 weight classes higher than me, far more seasoned than me, way better than me. I was basically a punching bag with legs for these people. And if I wasn't me, and I wasn't either tough enough or dumb enough, or maybe a small combination of both of those things, I would have never stuck with it long enough to get to the moment of like this moment of realization that I had at some point along my corporate journey, or I hate that word, but my corporate experience, where our store was being celebrated for the cleanliness and the way that we operated, how I was able to have certain processes streamlined and things like that. So they had an all company meeting where all the general managers came down, and I showed them all the ways that I had tweaked things and done things. And I just kind of had this realization of, how did I go from being a 19-year-old dishwasher, no education, to I'm now in a room giving a tour and giving operational advice to 50 people who all have degrees, multiple degrees, have spent their entire life doing it, the by the book way. And all I could think about was, well, I learned how to hold myself accountable because of fighting, because you have to hold yourself accountable. Because the only one who pays the price in fighting, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, is you. I learned about responsibility, my responsibility to myself, but also my responsibility to be a good teammate, and all those different things. And I thought, man, why does the number one most impactful thing that has to happen at an MMA gym have to be that you learn how to kick people? And so that was really when I had the idea of like, no, I'm going to open an MMA gym, but I want it to be able to reach people that don't care about getting in a cage because they have other things to work through. And through the process of challenging yourself to do something that you're afraid of, you learn how to just apply that same like, oh man, I'm scared, I'm going to do it anyway. You learn how to apply that in other areas of your life because you're working the overarching skill of building that resilience, that tenacity of your spirit and your willpower and your ability to hold yourself accountable and be responsible to yourself. And so that was kind of like what got me where I really wanted to go in the direction of like how I'm going to run the gym. And then the values that you spoke about, those are the tenets of Bushido. There are 8 of them total. We have shirts, 7 of them. The 8th one is self-control. And that kind of is like the overarching thing, philosophy that kind of encapsulates the other 7, right? Because if you don't have self-control, you can't practice compassion intentionally. If you don't have self-control, you will never be able to possess courage, because if you can't control yourself enough to make you do the things you're afraid of, courage can't exist. And so that's why I decided to tie the Bushido tenets in, as well as I'm huge on stoicism too, because that's all about self-control. Because I just think it all just ties everything together nicely, and people in a few months' time can start to see like, wow, this really can help me elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the biggest struggle, right? Is getting people to give it a long enough chance so that they can see what it really is. So thank you, by the way, for doing that, for giving it a long enough chance to see.
What really kind of struck me is I love the self-control as the overall, like it's the leading value, because the other shirt that I really connected to was integrity. And if you have no self-control, then you're going to make choices that pull you away from integrity, away from your values. And so I do, and I can see it, I think in a lot of different physical modalities, you get to teach these bigger lessons, these bigger values through the physical body. It's giving people that somatic experience where like through the striking, through the kickboxing, so just for everyone, I don't roll. I don't do that. Like I have personal space issues. I got neck issues, but like I love coming to Fight for Tomorrow. I don't get there as often as I'll be there next week, by the way, which I'm very much looking forward to. But I think through that physicality, you're able to give people an access point to these bigger messages. And I think that really sets what you're doing apart from, like, I don't want to be like other gyms, but like other fitness arenas. And I think it's really special.
Well, thank you for saying that. And my goal was never to be different, with the air quotes. My goal was to be authentic. And I think our society right now is so kind of focused on like what's going to differentiate us from whatever. And I see it all the time with tech, like with technical videos of striking and jujitsu and all these things. And it's like people are just trying to figure out anything they can that no one else has ever thought of. And humans have been around long enough that you're not going to figure out a way to bend an arm backwards that someone else hasn't figured out. Like the arm bends this way, bend it the other way. There's only so many ways to do that. And I think that where people fall into the trap is that they try so hard to be different from everyone else that they're just exactly the same as everyone else, because everyone is trying so hard to be different that you eventually end up all being the same. So my goal was never to be different. My goal was always to just be authentic, like to be real. Because I think things don't feel very real anymore.
Yeah.
Like money. It's like I can like touch my phone and all of a sudden you have money now and I don't have the money. But there was no money. It's just a number on a screen. And I think that in this day and age, I think that people are really, really like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like yearning for like real things that are real, that you can feel inside of you in an intangible spiritual way. Like this is real. Mm-hmm. This is a real thing. And so that's what I'm looking for. And to your point about the physical body bringing that out, the physical body is attached to your mental. And the being able to see that I did, when somebody was yelling at me, I did 5 push-ups after I thought I had no push-ups left. There is more. And if you do that enough times, the person that talks you through that can be you. And you can start to say to yourself, no, I just want to be comfortable right now, but I know that I can do more. So yeah, I think that that's the main thing. It's like, how do I just be who I am and use the things that I've learned through all of my failures to hopefully help people navigate their own, not their own life. I'm not a life coach, but it's weird because it's like I'm not a life coach, but I am happy to help people with anything that they might be struggling with, but I don't present myself in such a way. I just think that it's like, man, just come to training, and the next thing you know, you have all these great relationships with people that you consider your greatest friends. You have a healthy social life that is also part of your physical and spiritual well-being, rather than going to the bar. Nothing good happens at a bar. And I think that the more places like that we have where people can be their true selves and they all just really want to help each other be better versions of themselves, the better off our world will be. So that's the goal.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Chad ask more questions, but this is sort of a hot topic for me, especially in someone who trains, other, specifically yoga professionals and other people who are in coaching positions, is that while we aren't therapists and we're not necessarily life coaches, it's a privilege. And with that privilege comes a pretty deep responsibility to understand that people are coming to these physical modalities for bigger reasons than just wanting to get a good workout in. The level of, for lack of a better word, trauma and the depth of what people are dealing with is something I think that gets pushed under the rug a little bit. And we almost, as health professionals, fitness professionals, almost like, I don't need to look there. And it's kind of like, no, we do have, like, if you're going to stand up there and speak to someone about being healthy and pushing through this, like, you kind of have to have a deeper understanding and deeper sense of core values to stand with them and be for them. And so as you were talking, that was, I don't know, that just stood out to me. I don't have a question, so I'll let you ask questions, but I just think it's a really important topic.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what Melissa said, that physical experience, that somatic experience, although you might not be a life coach, through the learning and the skill acquisition, trying something new, whether it's new or not, is a gateway into learning more of the philosophy and the mental, emotional, psychological states that you may be navigating, right? So that's just a gateway into learning more about yourself.
Right.
That being said, going back to, the gyms that you used to train at and the structure of those gyms and what you want to see in your own facility and your community and culture, how do you navigate the different coaching methodologies between someone that's new and someone that's been training for years? So like, for example, I know Melissa, when she comes to striking, you have a Muay Thai fighter that's competing on a professional level, is highly skilled. And then you have Melissa that's day one, brand new, doesn't know a single thing about throwing a punch. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely, I don't like to use the word challenge but it is a challenge, but it's a challenge in a good way. It's a very stoic idea of like the obstacle is the way. So if you have like, and I know a lot of people that like their program is like, we're based on like whatever. You come in, they tell you do this, and then everybody goes and does it. And then 5 minutes later, they say do this, and then everybody does it. And if you're brand new, it's like, well, you're going to make it or you're not. You're either going to leave or you're not. And I've kind of taken it as the opposite, because the people that are already at that level, whatever drill you're going to do, they can figure it out and they can do it. It's the people, to me, that the ones that really need the attention the most are the people who are brand new, intimidated to be there. And, like we spoke about how when I first came in, I was getting beat up every day right off the bat. Well, imagine that you're someone that is a very, maybe you're late 20s, early 30s. You're very timid. You get pushed around. People treat you like a doormat. You're really trying to work hard on having a little more confidence, feeling better about yourself, feeling like it's okay to hold boundaries, do all these things, and you're just so scared to do MMA because you think you're just going to go in there and get beat up. So what do? You Google it, you look at it, you pull up a bunch of things, you close it, a week goes by, you do it again. So now for 3 months, you've been going back and forth. I'm going to go in. I'm not. I'm going to go back. I'm not. That's the courage, right? You're terrified. You finally show up, and it's like, oh, yeah, go over there. And nobody pays attention to you. Or you show up and you don't know what you're doing, and I go, come on, let's go. You got to get with the program right now. Pick it up. What are you doing? Right? And now I'm yelling at you. I'm telling you to suck it up and all these different things. You're gone. All that is going to do is all I'm doing now is reinforcing the fact that you should just be scared of everything the rest of your life. And you should never go outside of your comfort zone ever again, and just sit in your room and just do what you know, and don't ever go outside your comfort zone ever again. That's all I did. Because you're never going to go to it. If you go through all of that and you finally come to me and that's the experience you have, you think you're going to go to another one? All I did is prove that every fear that you had about what you were going to do was correct. So to me, the most important part of coaching is understanding what each person's goal is. Like, if you come in and you've been training you're already a purple belt, and you say, I want to be a pro fighter, I want to start taking MMA fights. And now I'm watching you during practice and you're on your phone and you're goofing around. Okay, I'm going to say to you, like, yo, put your phone away and get to work. What are you doing? If you're someone when we talk, I understand that, like, first of all, you're really nervous about the whole thing. I'm gonna treat you differently. And by treating people, I don't like using the word that you treat people differently. I'm going to coach people differently is what I should say. Treat everyone the same. But you have to get them to the point of being ready for the next step, which I guess you're never really ready. But like an example would be if you come in and you're completely out of shape, and you just can barely even get through a workout at any pace whatsoever, I'm just going to congratulate you all the time on just showing up and just working out. And now, okay, you've been working out for 3 months. I know that you can get a couple extra reps in during each round. So, hey, let's do 3 more before we take a break. And then, okay, so now we get through 3 more sets of combinations. And now 3 or 6 months have gone by. Now you've lost 10 pounds. And now I can say, hey, come on, man, I know you got this. And now I can start giving a little bit more of a nudge where you can't shock somebody immediely because they'll just disappear. And you'll kick in that fight or flight thing. So I always tend to be much more gentle up front and much more accepting of people's excuses and things like that. It's more like, no, you can do it. Come on, rather than stop making excuses, get to work. It's the same. You're doing the same thing, but you need to meet people where they're at and make it so that like they actually feel like there's a point to them even being there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and I think you're pointing to. I loved what you said about if someone's coming in and they're out of shape, and you expect them to be at a different step in that staircase, and you haven't created the winnable gaps for them. For those of us in the health industry, it's like if you're discouraging them from moving, like that's not doing them any favors. And so creating those winnable gaps and exactly what you said, where you meet people where they're at, whether it's your first time, which is definitely me, to the person who's been doing this for years. And I can speak from experience. You run a very inclusive class. I mean, there's, I'm always still a little bit intimidated because like I have something around holding the more advanced people back, but that's my stuff to deal with because everybody that has partnered with me has been like so great. Like there's definitely no no sense of holding them back. You know what I mean? That's all stuff.
And I'm super happy that we got back to this because there's something I forgot to mention earlier, and it ties into this sort of a thing. But what I've noticed is because you've been dealing with movement for forever, and you know how to move your body, you know how to lift a lot of weight. I'm pretty sure you deadlift more than I could, and so that's not new to you. But the other side of it, being boxing, that is new to you. And what I've noticed is that a lot of times people who are not teenagers, who are grown adults, who have been in a certain field or in a certain place for a certain amount of time, and they achieve a high level at that, it can become very hard to, at 30 years old or 35 years old, when you've been doing something for 20 years, all of a sudden go and have no idea what you're doing. And like, you're just like, I'm confused. I don't know it can be a very hard thing to kind of do that. But that's why I feel like it's so important, because just because you're good at something doesn't mean that should be the only thing you do. And of course, you can only have one priority at a time. But I feel like people push themselves out of their comfort zone more when they're a little younger because they're kind of forced to. And then they find something they're good at, they stay with that. That's your new comfort zone where you're just going to die at now. Like, I'm not going over there. I know this. I'm going to stay right here. And so that's another version of the challenge that people go through to come in. And I always think about when people come in on their first couple of days, what it feels like to be the only sober person at a wedding and then go and dance. None of the drunk people are looking at you dancing. But you're like, I'm going to look like I don't know how to dance. You don't want to dance. It's like you just got to get on the floor and start dancing. And eventually you realize like none of these drunk idiots have any idea that I'm even here. But that's been the biggest analogy to me is like the dancing at a wedding. Because I know so many people who are embarrassed or self-conscious to dance at a wedding because they think they're not going to look good. But everybody at the wedding is either they're dancing on their own or they're doing their own thing. And so I use that analogy often because it kind of like can make it seem like, well, yeah, it's really like, it's not that serious, it's not that serious, but it is that serious. It's like, again, that's another dichotomy where it's like, you have to have fun with it, but it's a very serious thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
There's a quote, it's a Stoic quote, and it says you must be, I'm going to butcher this now, but basically you must be serious in natures of like in the little things, and the big things you can't take serious. It's like you got to just kind of like let it ride. I'll look it up and I'll text it to you. I'm sorry.
No,
I know exactly what I'm thinking of, but I'm just going to continue to butcher it. But it's like you got to know, like, we're all here for a set amount of time, and then none of us get out alive. And so as much as sometimes the little things that we're going through on a day-to-day basis seem like, oh my God, this is the biggest thing in the universe. When you're able to kind of remember, like, well, I mean, not really. There's been 1,000 generations of people before me, and there's going to be 1,000 generations of people after me. And me worrying about how my armbar looks is probably not that high up on the level of universal scale of importance, right? But the important thing is what happens inside of you because you're trying to work through those things. So, yeah,
awesome.
It's hard to speak in absolutes because everything is so dichotomous with this type of thing,
That also speaks to what it means to you. If there's some type of internal struggle over that armbar, all that means is that it's important to you. So finding that's the dichotomy you're talking about, being able to navigate, understand that, hey, this is really important to me. It means that I care, and that's why I may be nervous for this upcoming match. But at the same time, like you said, there's 1,000 generations before and 1,000 generations after. It's not the end of the world. But to keep chipping away at the end goal with all the small goals that you're just speaking to, that's what you really need to focus on, so that the big goal, the end of the tunnel, it all plays together, all the puzzle pieces match up, and you find yourself at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, and it's like, if it's important to you, that's good enough. Who cares who else it's important to? Like, everybody, again, can't talk in absolutes, but generally speaking, people are so concerned with what other people think about what they're doing with their life that they'll literally just not do the thing that means the most to them in the whole world because they don't want their parents to say, well, that's dumb. Well, I mean, I know a lot of people that say, this is the way they ask them, why do you want to get punched in the face all the time? It's like, well, I don't have enough time to explain to you how you're missing the whole thing here, but it's not about getting punched in the face. And that's where it's like, if it's important to you, I feel like that's really good enough, and that should be good enough. And anybody that isn't going to support you doing something that makes you feel whole as a being, forget about even human, just as a spiritual, as a celestial, universal, whatever kind of being you want it to be, then you don't really need to be around those people. And you don't need to be angry at them, and you don't need to be confrontational with them, and you don't need to wish that bad things happen to them. But you could just don't spend your time around them, because there are a lot of people that I know that did not want me to fight. My mom was like, "What are you doing? Why are you going to fight? You're my little boy," And she never came to any of my fights. Except I got my skull fractured in a fight. I had cosmetic reconstruction done on my sinus cavity. 5 months later, I had another fight, and that was going to be my last fight. And after the fight, I'd won the fight, And all of a sudden there was someone literally like, it looked like you see in the movies, like the hood up. And it's like, oh, like in Game of Thrones, you're at the execution, you have the hood up and nobody knows that you're the king, you know? Well, nobody knew. It was my mom. She took the thing down and it was my mom. She swore she would never come to a fight, but she went to that one and sucked it up and watched me fight in a cage because she wanted to support me. She didn't like it, but she knew what it meant for me. And so that's where it's like, if you just be around the people that maybe they're going to even tell you they don't agree with you, but they're going to show up for you when something is important to you, those are the people that you need to be around in your life. And the first step to finding those people is being okay with doing that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. We were just having this conversation the other day, and like around the people that you surround yourself with. And one of the comments that I made to Chad was, I was like, not everybody deserves your time and your attention. And it's okay to not give it to them. Like, well, not just to be totally blunt, there are some people who aren't worth it. And like, you have to figure out where you're going to invest your time, because time and your attention, and where your attention goes, that's where your energy is going to go. And like, if you're going to put that into negative people, or people who don't have the same values, or people who take you down a path away from your core values, like that's time of your life that you don't get back, and it's wasted. So
100%. And you know, I take it even a little bit like one step further, where I try to not assign value to a person other than pedophiles. Pedophiles get zero leeway from me at all. Other than that, I'm pretty willing to look at, like, you still have a lot of value as a person, but maybe I'm not the one who's going to be able to get you where you need to go. Maybe you're not ready for someone else to help you at this point. So at that point, it's not a good investment. It's like, if you look at time like money, right? That's where you can say, like, I'm not going to just keep spending all my money on this thing. It never does anything for me. I'm spending all my money eating out, and now I can never have a nice vacation because I keep door dashing coffee, right? And so it's like, I feel like it's hard to do, right? Especially if you're people like us, who are, the things that we do are based around helping other people. Mm-hmm. However that might be. It might be on more of a personal coaching level where you know them better. Maybe it's someone that, like my wife Megan is running the Philly Marathon. She hired someone that she liked on Instagram that's writing her running plans. They don't know each other, but she's still helping Megan do something that's very important to her. Mm-hmm. And so I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry. But yeah, it's just like, you just have to choose, like, what you invest your time and energy into. And I have a lot of people that I have kind of like removed from my life, or severely limited how much they get into my life, but I love them and I want the absolute best for them. But that doesn't mean that they get to come here now. You're going to stay over there. And when I see you at the picnic once a year, I'll ask you how you're doing. We'll talk about your kids, and then I'll see you later. Mm-hmm. So some people you just can't just keep invested. Yeah. If it's only ever been a loss, eventually you're just throwing the time away.
Yeah. Speaking to helping people and finding that time and or giving advice, what advice do you have for people that are scared to either get into martial arts, question martial arts, or as to why they should start or why to not, but mainly those that are struggling to make that first jump and have some courage to take their first class? Any advice for them?
Well, The simplest advice I would have is that if it's something that you've been thinking about and you've been considering, then it's worth exploring. Go do it. If it's not good, then you did it. I'm a real big believer in like, don't leave things on the table without at least trying them, right? So it's like, maybe you think this is going to help you stop drinking so much, lose weight, feel better about yourself, set better boundaries, just be stronger, know how to protect your family, right? Even yourself. But if these are things that like you have this thing in the back of your mind of like, man, I really should at least know something. Go try it. And if you hate it, ask yourself why. You might just hate it because your ego doesn't like not being good at something. It could very well be that. Now, of course, people with like legitimate like physical trauma and things of that nature, where PTSD and all these different things that can happen to people when they're like severe trauma happens to them, I would still say do it. Just be very careful with where you go and listen to your intuition. If you walk into a place and everybody makes you feel like an outsider and nobody cares about you, or they're treating you poorly, or just not treating you well. It doesn't even have to be poorly, just not treating you like they're interested in you. That doesn't mean that every single gym is like that. You can find another one. And anybody can DM me on Instagram, and I can find good places for you wherever you are, tell you where to go. So I'm happy to help. Like I said, I want the whole world to do jujitsu. If you could replace every McDonald's with a jujitsu school, that would be an amazing transformation that would take place for the whole world. But it starts one person at a time. So you owe it to yourself to at least kind of give it a shot.
Yeah, from a female perspective, like I think you keyed in to a couple things where I hadn't thought. I had done boxing before years ago when I lived in New York, and I loved it. And then I had an injury to my elbow, and it took me until I walked into Fight for Tomorrow to be able to get back into it. And I hadn't thought of the perspective of utilizing it in a functional way should I ever need to. Right. And that has really shifted a lot. And what I mean by that is, it is not, and I don't know, I guess, whatever, I'll just be very unfiltered. People can agree or disagree. Like, I think as a female, to know how to defend yourself in a certain situation, it helps develop a sense of control and a sense of personal agency that, you pointed to people with PTSD and having trauma. One of the things that we know about that, it lacks safety, it lacks predictability, and it lacks control. Practicing this type of movement and having it be that functional can give someone back that sense of control, even for a moment, which puts us on the path towards post-traumatic growth instead of a disorder, So I think that's, you're pointing out something really important. And I would, I think you also have that supportive community behind you. And I would say anyone who's in the Bucks County area, DM me, I'll go with you. I'm still very, very new and still feel like a fish out of water walking in there. And I think everyone should kind of come check it out. And the movement, the fact that there's movement and functionality is really a cool thing. And if anybody wants a training buddy, I'm happy to go with them. Not to the jiu-jitsu, sorry. I'm not there yet, but the striking and the kickboxing.
Yeah, we'll get you there. I'm still working on my wife with the jiu-jitsu. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. I do feel that it's more important for women than men. I mean, it's differently important. We'll put it like that, because women, you have to protect yourself, right? So you don't need to armbar someone, but if you can keep someone's hips floating above you instead of directly on top of you without getting too graphic, if someone can't pin you, they can't rape you, right? So my advice to women is like, maybe you don't even want to compete, but like learn a good butterfly guard and just learn a butterfly guard and a technical stand up. Because most of these creatures that do these things to women, the second that you resist them, they're going to slither back under the rock that they came from and they're going to disappear. Now for men, it's a little bit, I take it much more personally with men because, first of all, if you're the type of man that does jujitsu, you're not the type of man that sexually assaults women.
Right.
Generally speaking, of course, there's outliers in everything. But also, I see men every day walking around society with little kids, and the only thing protecting those children is the kindness of the strangers around them. And to me, that is just something that as a man, I would never, ever be okay with the fact that the only thing keeping my wife safe when we go out is the fact that nobody decided to attack her today. Mm-hmm. And for me, I tell men, if you get nothing out of it, at least you'll get the sense of, man, if I have to save my kid from somebody throwing him in the trunk of a car. Now, I don't mean to take this in a negative way, or in a not negative, in a depressing or morbid way. But it's like, I just can't imagine having to just hope that you're never around a bad person when you're with, or your wife or your boyfriend or whatever. It doesn't matter. Someone that you care about. And for women, yourself, obviously. So yeah, I think it's so important in so many different ways, and that is like the bear down as far down as you go. Like if you know how to fight, you know how to protect yourself and other people. You'll also be way less likely to fight. I used to get in fights all the time until I started fighting. Well, you could just get knocked out by accident. You don't do that stuff. And it also can help. It also helps you be more humble because you're going to get humbled a million times. And then when you get to the point where you're good enough, usually you want to use that to help other people who aren't there yet get there. Mm-hmm. The true strength is in lifting other people up, right? Not holding other people down. So
totally.
I love that, man. Before we wrap it up, any last messages that you'd like to share or any other comments you have?
Yeah. The universe is going to give you what you ask for, but it's not going to feel that way for a while. That's the biggest thing. And I thought of this and I wrote it down earlier when we were talking. When we were talking about how people come in sometimes that aren't in shape, they don't know how to fight. That it's like everybody, like, yeah, of course it would be cool to like have a gym where it's like, everybody's like, it's a UFC gym and look at all these high level guys. Like, of course that would be cool, right? But when you say you want to open a gym that is going to help people, then you're going to get people that need help, right? And I had to remind myself of that when I first opened, of like, you're getting what you asked for. Right now, this is your opportunity to do the thing that you said was your purpose for life, to help create a stronger, more resilient society through martial arts. This is what you asked for. People that are already resilient and strong, those aren't you can help, like martial arts can help those people too, but that's not why you created this. So sometimes we get into these things. From a personal level, I would like to be stronger. I would like to be more confident. I would like to break my ego down a little bit. I would like to be more accountable, be more responsible for myself. That it will all happen. The universe will give you that, but it won't feel like that's what's happening. You're going to be like, I'm getting smashed every day. I don't know what's going on. It's like, well, it's all part of it. You just got to stay with it. Because if you really want something, what's the quote? It's from the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Best fiction book, my favorite fiction book of all time. It says, when you want something, all the universe will conspire to help you get it. That doesn't mean it's just somebody's going to knock on your door and you're going to have it. And I think that's where people lose their their drive to better themselves sometimes because they think it's going to be this like Rocky movie. Like there's going to be this awesome music behind it while you're running up this hill. But instead, running up that hill feels horrible. It's terrible. You can't breathe. Your legs are sore, right? And we see all these things in the movie and we're like, that's what it's going to look like for me to get better. That's not what it's going to be. And if you can just remember that, it'll help you through those tough times. And then one day you'll look back and be like, how did I end up here? And it's Chad, like just like what you said earlier about those small wins. If you stack enough pebbles on top of each other, you'll have a mountain eventually. That's the way. So I guess I'll leave it there because I'll keep talking for.
Yeah, I love that.
We'll go for 6.
Listen, brother, we really appreciate it, man. And we'd love to do this again and talk more shop. And we look forward to seeing you in person and mixing it up. What we'll do is we'll put all of your information down. But real quick, easy way to reach Evan here is his social media pages, The Fight for Tomorrow with underscores between all of those words. He also has the Path Submission series, which is that a grappling tournament style?
Yeah, I'm still working on it, but I'm trying to redo submission grappling competition because I feel that a lot of the reasons people don't stay with grappling is because the tournaments are not beginner friendly at all. They're all dirty. The venues suck. Single elimination, $150. You pay $150. You got to drive 4 hours away. You got to get a hotel. You're $800 deep to go and lose your first match in a minute and a half, and then you're done. Who the hell wants to keep doing that? Nobody. So we do guaranteed matches. We don't charge fees. We make sure that we treat everybody good. It's all about keeping people on the path. That's why it's called that. It's all about keeping people on the path. Hopefully we're definitely going to continue to do it. Hopefully we're going to be able to get more and more and more people into jiu-jitsu. That's the goal. Kind of opposite of what the Craig Jones thing is doing, where he's trying to draw more eyes. I want more people. I want more people on the mats. That's the goal of my whole tournament. I don't care about making money or being famous. I want more people on the mats. So that's what that's all about. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to connect with you guys and talk and be a guest on your podcast. And I look forward to seeing you both soon.
Likewise, man. And for all the listeners, if you are in the Philadelphia region, especially Bucks County, Montgomery County, Fight for Tomorrow Fight Academy is in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So make sure you stop by and visit. It's a fantastic culture, and you can learn a whole heck of a lot.
And it's all age ranges. So if you have kids, because I know Bucks County, we've got a lot of kids in Bucks County. Really great kids programs, adult stuff. And I'm going, as long as I don't get booked with any clients, definitely going to go Monday and Wednesday to striking. So if anybody wants to go with me, DM me.
I'll tell Megan you'll be there. She'll be excited.
Yay.
All right, brother. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you, guys.
For listening in, thanks for joining us. And we look forward to having you again soon. We are signing off. Thanks again.